Let me welcome you back and apologize for that audio glitch we had from before. We're trying to fix the gremlins in the system, but we have already. And before that, I was trying to tell you guys about, well, today's episode of Breakfast Extra, as is brought to us by Edo Politics. And we had started with a prequel, where before the elections even took off, there were plenty of whispers from all around Edo State and plenty of side eyes from the corners of the state, with the Labour Party entering the race with the determination of a first-year university student like we used to do when we got into school. Full of hope, we're full of energy, and the belief that we're going to do this thing and do it right the first time out. You could almost hear their campaign anthem blaring like a hype song before a boxing match. Remember that one? Dun, 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 ain't going nowhere. You know who is by, yeah? Well, the people all rallied behind them, but as election day drew near, the momentum sort of faltered. In the end, LP's dream was like that workout plan where you start with all the motivation in the world, and only 2 weeks after you abandon it when reality hits you, when Nigeria starts Nigeriaing. Now, despite their best efforts, Edo voters handed them the L. You get what I just did there? It's a pity that they lost even at the candidate's very own ward. Now enter Akpata, the man who speaks with the calm demeanor of a diplomat trying to soothe the stormy sea. While others failed and panicked, Akpata, well, he came out to assure everyone that he remains committed to future political participation. Translation, don't worry, fam, I'll be back for the sequel and I'm still, available for any kind of future participation or appointments. But that's just me, I kid. Meanwhile, we're still reeling from the results of this one currently going on. Well, at least he stood out first off and said, I'm the man of the moment and I'll accept and still be open to whatever comes. And then there is Okpebholo, not Okpebholo, and Ighodalo of the frenemies of Edo Politics. Let's put it that way. Now, this duo, boy, where do I begin about them? Okpebholo, the victor, stretches out a hand of peace, an offering, and Ighodalo, well, probably while looking at his lawyer, decides to kind of decline. He's not here for post-election kumbaya. No, Ighodalo is the kind of man who would rather see you in court than at a dinner party. And as expected, he vows to seek redress in court because apparently in Edo Politics, losing isn't the end, it's just the beginning of the prequel of Edo Politics next week. Join us then, I guess. But we should have known that all of this wasn't going to be a smooth ride now, shouldn't we? In fact, we said so from before last week. Just as the votes were being tallied, INEC's result portal decided to pull out the disappearing act. It got stuck, they say, at 98%. Yes, 98%. A final 2% might have toppled everything. But hey, left everyone like, what's going to happen next, biting our nails? And days later, 5 LGAs were still hanging in limbo, nothing. Now, you'd think that by now, INEC would have had time to figure out how to avoid this kind of cliffhanger, but nope. If the aim is to keep us all in suspense, well, congratulations, INEC. Mission accomplished. What can I say? Another good movie. And now, after all the excitement, all the campaigning, we find ourselves in the same familiar circle. You see, Edo Politics game, the political game in Edo State, is like a coin with 2 identical sides. And it doesn't matter how you flip it, or how many times, or which way it lands. The outcome, they say, is always the same. Whether you're running from the PDP's legacy of governance or sprinting towards the thorny embrace of the APC, you're still stuck with the same frustrations, the same unfulfilled promises, they say, and yes, the same old faces. I mean, didn't they see what happened to Nigeria since 1 year? You're still... Okay, in any case, the good people of Edo State must feel like they've been tricked into a political version of running on a treadmill. No matter how fast you go, no matter what direction you put it, you're still in the same spot, sweating, frustrated, and wondering why you even bothered in the first place. But enough doom and gloom. We all know that's democracy, right? One big merry-go-round where the more things change, the more things stay the same. But listen, let's stop and welcome you guys to Breakfast Extra, where we make sense of this circus, laugh at the absurdities sometimes, and give you the real tea on the political charade that is Edo State. Judith, like I promised from before, my dear, please, if you will, can you please give us a song to perfectly sum up everything that's happened so far since last week? Judith, what's your choice?
It's going to be a sorry, sorry, oh, a sorry for Nigeria.
I see. I like. And there, people, should be what you have in your minds as we run through our entire content for today here on Breakfast Extra. You're welcome.
And you're welcome back to the show. It's Breakfast Extra for a Saturday, the very first installment for this weekend, the last weekend for the month of September. Now, we're shifting our focus today to the big report of the day from last weekend's Edo State elections, which left everyone talking, from the political and analysts to the average voter. What should have been a smooth democratic process, or it seemed like it, turned into a theater of chaos, allegations, and technical difficulties. So between accusations of rigging, vote buying, underage voters casting ballots, and an electoral commission struggling to get results out, this election has been anything but straightforward.
Yes, indeed, you bet. We just told about that. With reports of INEC portal getting stocked at 28% for days, and major contenders at loggerheads, Edo political landscape was nothing short of dramatic. In fact, it was the drama to see all week. But there's no better way to understand what really went down than to hear from those who were, well, in the thick of it. Today, we're taking a closer look at the last weekend's events through the eyes of our reporters who were stationed across various locations in Edo State. They witnessed the action, the tension, and also the questionable practices that have raised eyebrows across the nation.
And so joining us are News Central's correspondents. We have Bettina Onweli, we have Amadi Uyi, and Austin Azu. Now these gentlemen and lady is going to join us. They've been seasoned journalists who were on the ground covering the elections from different perspectives and different parts of Edo State. And first on the lineup is Austin Azu. Austin, thank you so much for joining us, and a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, Austin, again, good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's just dive right into it, shall we? You were at the rack center, I beg your pardon, and you witnessed how the materials were going out. But first, let's get your overview experience from last week Saturday's elections.
The last week Saturday election in Edo State has come and gone, but somehow we are left with the memories of how the day went. And first, we got our accreditation before we went about our normal businesses for that particular day. I covered Edo Central, precisely that of the the PDP governorship candidate at Awehimi, Ward 3, Unit 1. And thereafter, we moved to other polling units and to other wards across the local government areas within Edo Central before we came to Edo South, where we covered a very few places like Ego local government area. However, we met some pockets of violence that erupted at Ward 7, Unit 21. And of course, you know quite well that whenever there was any crisis or violence in any polling unit, that particular polling unit will not record any vote count. So definitely that Ego in Ward 7, Unit 21 was cancelled. It was not recorded any results. So, but we experienced, large turnouts of some voters in some particular wards and some particular polling units. We saw heavily armed security personnel on the ground. They were very pretty much on the ground, and they were kind of civil. And what's actually, that was most prevalent in the areas we visited was vote buying. Vote buying became like, at what happened at the parallel market. So you need to trade your business. You need to ensure that you have more value for what you want to sell. From us at around 12 noon on Saturday, the exchange rate was between 7,000 to 10,000. So from 12 o'clock down to 2 o'clock, the exchange rate went higher. So some people were eventually selling for the rate of 15,000 to 19,000, be it as it may. So invariably, it means that all the political parties that went in for that election, one way or the other, were involved in the horse trading, because we saw some people at the end of the day after voting, they were giving foods. Some people were giving some exchange of cash behind the scene. So obviously the people were actually out for the business of the day. But at the end of the day, so we finally came back to the rack center, where the collation process was quite delayed, almost about 17 hours before it finally started. So, but nevertheless, while we are waiting for the collation to begin around 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, we heard about the arrival of the sitting governor to the INEC center. So obviously he raised some uproar from the opposition party in the state, which is APC, and they equally came into the arena and they demanded that the governor must leave the vicinity that early morning, otherwise nobody will leave. So it took the intervention of the DIG, who is in charge of the election, and other security personnel to ensure they are able to restore peace to the area, because as at then we had some noise from outside the gate and some other people who have no business coming to the rack center, attempts to infiltrate the area. So it took the intervention of the security agencies to ensure they are able to, calm the situation before finally the governor was escorted out of the premises.
Now,
and
Austin,
we came out from the premises, we saw, presence of youth. Yeah, I can hear you.
Now, Austin, now if we understand that you're currently in Anambra, also covering the elections there as well. Now, if you compare what you saw pre-election in Edo State to what's happening currently in Anambra State, what comparison would you give? What's the the atmosphere like as they're expecting the elections?
Currently in Anambra State right now, and we heading towards one of the polling units and one of the wards where we'll be having the election this morning. Election ought to have started exactly 8 o'clock from what we are told by the INEC chairman, but all the way from Onitsha down to this particular area, we have not seen any presence of these officials, the INEC officials, not even security personnel. It seems everyone seems to be going about their normal duty, whatever. But meanwhile, I have some people who are here who can give us some signs of, some benefits of doubt to tell us how prepared they are, because it's obvious that these people are still waiting for the materials and they are yet to arrive. Okay, please come this way. Please come this way. Okay, tell us your name and how prepared are you for the election?
Okay. My name is Okpebholo. I'm from Anambra State, Ighodalo government of Anambra State. I'm seeing everything about the election. Everything is going well. Small time we gather here because of the election, because we are going to our praying unit, different places. So I say I believe that the election will go well. The election will go well. So what do we need to forward? Support our good candidate, that the person that we will vote for. So I believe from now till 3 o'clock, everything, the election and the voters, we can see that everything goes well. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's speak to Mazi. Mazi, please, tell us your name and how prepared are you for this election?
Afambo Wabrika Marika.
English.
Ibokanasu. Koya ajo iwe Korea. Abamu Wabrika Marika. Election I gejeto. Munata na erube. Ayi no ka embecha na obu iwe mu anu nwom iwe mu na ntucha anya. Ntucha onye mbu no oboto tolu obi ya ka ị ga-akpọ. Ntuchizie nye onye mbu no obu eru anọrọ ebe ahụ anọtọ ya agụcha ekwuora na ihe onye wi na akụwa ka afọ adebe ibe ọzọ. Mgbe risara m amenye to vote again. mana etu abịago n'ụdị nke a mụ ya eji 27 ndị akpọ m ndube m anyị anyị gbago ebe a ebe nsogbu akwụrụ kaba ga-akwụ ndị ebe m biri kaba ga-ebiri mana abiri mmadụ si echejizi na ọbịa iwu ndị mmadụ gwara ji na tiraba mma njezi etu akawa n'ọnụ.
Well, all right then. Thank you very much.
All right, Zino, let me just quickly interpret from what Mazi just said. And he's...
Go ahead, please.
All right, he said because of last year's election, the presidential election, and he said that they were robbed. And because of that, he decided not to go to the poll before. But currently, right now, he has changed his mind that he's going to go to the poll, the polling units to go and vote. But he's just asking for security personnel and to ensure that their votes will count.
Well, thank you so much, Austin, for that. Well, we'll come back to you. But in the meantime, we have Amadin Uyi, Chief of our Abuja Bureau for News Central TV. Amadin, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us. It's been, the elections for Edo State is wrapped up. It's now over. The results are out. The governor or the governor that won the, or rather, Okpebholo and the ruling party APC have won the elections for Edo State, and he's gone to collect his return certificate. But we're assessing the elections, right? And Austin just pointed out a number of things that happened on that election day. And one of them, which has been crucial and really been talked about, is vote buying, right? It's been, and even reeled out the numbers, the amounts that was paid. And you also sort of talked about covert vote buying during that time. I've also seen reports from Yaga Africa, particularly, and other observers of the election who have pointed to vote buying as them being prevalent on that day. What are your thoughts to that, and also underage voting and all the other events that happened during the elections? Martin, can you hear me? Martin.
It would seem that he is not. He can't hear us apparently, unfortunately. But good question there.
We'll try to bring him up if we have to.
I hope we're able to establish connection with him again, so that we could ask him this very important question. Also, how the electorate, the voters, actually accepted the results after it was announced. I really would like to know from Amadin. But I'm also being told that we have Ifuna Ndeka of Ready to Lead, who was also an election observer at the Edo State elections. Ifuna, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Is Ifunaya with us? I saw her just a minute ago. Well, we're still going to try and establish connection with her as well. But talking about you spoke about the reports that have come out since after. There's that one from Yaga Africa. There's also the Kimpact results report, which seem to be quite similar.
Yes.
And later on during the show, we're going to be talking to a gentleman and lady from these two different observation centers or observation bodies who monitor the elections in Edo State, and what they found out. Apparently, they're ruffling feathers. Let me just put it that way.
It is ruffling feathers. And all of the political parties as well, APC, Labour Party, and PDP, because it indicted every single party who participated and said every party bought votes during that time. Of course, the PDP have come to say they didn't. APC has vehemently denied and said these allegations are false, they are not true, and the votes and the results reflect what the people of Edo State want. But like you said, which is very pertinent, it's very important that we speak to our reporters to understand how they received the results from the elections and whether or not what the PDP and the APC says is true. So there's a lot going on. And honestly, but the truth of the matter is that the reports, the comprehensive report from Yaga, Kimpact, Ready to Lead, and these other organizations who are observers for the election also broadens a wider, problem with our electoral process and whether or not we can have it as transparent as possible. But we've just been informed that we have Amadin Uyi, our chief of Abuja Bureau for News Central TV. He joins us now. Amadin, thank you so much for joining us. We lost you there for a second, but good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Earlier I was asking about,
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, if you heard Austin earlier on in a submission, he was talking about vote buying and even reeled out the amount that was paid before and on the day of the elections in Edo State. And you also, during your submission, when we spoke last time during the elections, you also pointed to covert buying, vote buying, which is a report that we've seen from Yaga's report of the elections, as well as the other observers who were observing the elections. What are your thoughts on this, and what other observations did you make during the elections?
I think clearly, just as I have stated before, there was vote buying and vote selling, vote trading, but it was very covert. If you compare the Edo election to the Ekiti and Osun election, the last obstacles in Ekiti and Osun, you realize that at those polls, it was in the open, but in Edo, it was covert. That means those involved are becoming more sophisticated. And whether we like it or not, we must admit that at this point in time, they are beating security agencies to the game. So whoever is responsible, the agencies that are responsible need to up their game and be able to also improve their intelligence so that they will be able to nip this in the bud. But the reality is that vote buying for now has come to stay in our polls. Whatever needs to be done fast. If not, voters will take it to be a norm.
Okay, then, Amadin, so there was plenty of reaction from after the results were announced, the APC. Even the president has congratulated the governor-elect, and he has said in his words, don't mind those noisemakers, referring to any report that might have come out that is disputing the result in their favor. However, what about the people of Edo State? Was it observed what their countenance was after the results were announced? How have they accepted or perhaps maybe shown non-support for the announcement? Did you notice anything?
Now, Edo election is very unique. It depends on the location where you are. In the Edo North area is a stronghold of the APC. So when the results were announced, there was jubilation on the street. Edo Central used to be a stronghold of the PDP. I use the word used to be because the two frontline candidates are from Edo Central. So definitely the votes will be split. And then it depends on the crowd you are mixing with. When you were with the people of the supporters of the People's Democratic Party, they were downcast. But standing with the supporters of the All Progressives Congress, to them it was a victory well deserved. Also, when you go to Edo South, which has the highest population, in all honesty, no party can lay claim to say, I am the dominant party in the Edo South area. Like I said, it depends on the crowd you are mixing with. For the supporters of the People's Democratic Party, because before the results were even announced on social media, a lot of fake results were, I call them fake because a result that is not announced by the electoral body should not be taken seriously. And there were different figures, not just one result, were being bandied around on social media. So they had expected that they had won the poll. So when the results came out, they were very downcast and they felt that the electoral body had been very unfortunate to them. Many of them are convinced that the election was rigged. But for the supporters of the All Progressives Congress, they are insisting and they are convinced that INEC called the real results. So that's why I said Edo election is very unique. It will be high-handedness to say one party won the election or another party was rigged out. but that is the position of the two dominant frontline political parties.
All right. Well, Amadi, we want to say thank you so much for taking out the time to discuss with us this morning. But we're going to switch gears away from you now and come to Ifunanya Nduka. She is part of the team at Lead Africa, and they were the observers, one of the observers for the gubernatorial elections in Edo State. Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining us this morning, and good morning to you, Ifunanya.
Good morning.
All right. Ifunanya, you've joined us from earlier on, and you heard the conversation between us and our correspondents who covered the elections. We also do understand that Yaga has put out a report quite comprehensive about detailing the specific election malpractices within the elections and some irregularities with the election, as well as Kimpact. What are your thoughts on the reports from both organizations?
Okay, so I've looked at the report from Yaga and from Kimpact, and I think they reflect largely what we also observed, at the elections in Edo State. There were cases of voter buy-in. There were cases of, violence, even though that wasn't as much as expected. There was a case of also, multiple cases rather, of voter intimidation, where people weren't allowed to express their constitutional rights, where observers weren't allowed to, record what was happening at certain wards, certain polling unit, and that was a concern for us. So absolutely, I think what Yaga reported reflected our views as well as an observer and as a civil society organization.
Ifunanya, I'm wondering, what are other forms of malpractice that might have gone on? Since you were also an election observer as well, you must have observed firsthand these instances. Were there other smaller instances that could have gone unreported or unrecorded by these reports that were submitted by Yaga and Kimpact? What did you find out yourself?
Okay, so outside what was reported, my team didn't find out any other thing, right? The malpractices were in the line of voter buying, oppression, in some cases, inaccessibility, to the polling units. When we consider people living with disability, when we consider the places that had, provision for magnifying glasses for people who had issues with their sight, when we consider all of these things, it seems like it was intentional, because INEC had promised before time that they were going to make provision for these things. But apparently, when we got to the polls, we saw that in the places that had, certain needs for persons with disability, there were no certain provisions, and where it was provided, people hardly used it. So we are wondering, was this intentional? Was this an oversight? Because INEC did their research, and there was data that showed, okay, in this particular local government, there are XYZ people who will need access, because they have problem with their eyesight, they need access because they use wheelchairs, they will need access for whatever reason. But there was just some discrepancies where we needed, these tools and these services and this accessibility, it wasn't present. And where it wasn't needed, it was present. We saw less than 30% compliance with the provision of magnifying glasses. And that was actually very appalling. So, that could be, some tool that was used, that could have been used to ensure that people didn't vote. But yeah.
Voter suppression is one thing that we always talk about here, and just saying that people with disability are unable to participate due to facilities not provided for them to aid them is something that is worrying and of concern. But very, very impressive there for you to point that out. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Ifunanya.
Thank you.
And now we have joining us Bukola Ido from Kimpact Initiative, Kimpact Development Initiative. Now, Bukola, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. You at Kimpact, you also had a similar report to the report that was submitted by Yaga that has caused plenty of controversy. So my question is, if you can give us specific detail on how these report was put together, specific names of places, we would like to know, please.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I think I think one of the things that happened in that election was it was one election that was one of the best planned election in Nigeria, off-cycle election. Surprisingly, in some of the component of that election, it happens to be the worst executed, most especially in the area of result management. So we put out our report. Initially, we had usually a joint report with gas situation room and some other civil society organization, and then we put out our statement last week. And in specific, there are things that went wrong with that election, and I'm going to stay, especially stay on the result management. And the result management was actually a shame. Now, so for instance, now to give you a background, we deploy over 500 election observer across the 18 local government. And then one of the things we have done on our ballot integrity was to compare what INEC released, on Form EC8A as released on IREV. So was to do a statistical analysis of that and then compare with what they released and what they declared and what our observer got on ground. So like about 3 comparisons. So number one, the one on IREV that INEC released officially themselves. So we have to download that and then analyze that statistically. Then number two is what INEC declared on TV that many of your station and some other station picked. Then also we now have to look at what our observer at the collation center also got. So and then we find huge amount of the inconsistency in those results. So to be specific now, number one, what INEC released, tabulation of INEC, what they released, you find clear case of overvoting in over 300 polling units across the 18 local government, clear case of overvoting, and that can be taken from IREF and from EC8A they release. And what am I talking about when I mention overvoting? So I am talking about where accredited voter was less than total vote cast. So what it means is that some people voted and they were not accredited, and according to the Electoral Act, that is overvoting, and that's supposed to be cancelled. So and then we discovered that in not the 18 local government and in over 300 polling units spread across. That is number one. And then the total vote that was affected is in excess of 10,000 votes. So let's put that one aside, number one. Number two is that INEC official, all the returning officers that return, and I think maybe you can go back and play your video again, and then you will confirm what I'm saying. Of course, it's it's on YouTube. All the returning officers that came from the local government claim that there were no cancellation in their local government. There were no cancellation in their local government from the polling unit. There were no cancellation. Please note that. However, on Form EC8A, what we on IREV rather, what we discover is that there are 22 polling units that they uploaded Form EC40G. That form is specifically for cancellation. So we have it, we've downloaded it. As a matter of fact, we've downloaded the over 4,000 result, 98% of the result that that was uploaded on the IRF, and then we have it. The time we downloaded it, we screenshot everything, and then we analyze that. So to let you know that there are 22 local governments.
Go ahead. We're with you, Bukola. Yes, we're with you. We're with you. Please go ahead.
So there are 22 polling units, 22 polling units that the results were cancelled and they were uploaded on IREF. And we were wondering, why will you come to the collation center and said there were no cancellation when there were 22 cancellation from EC40G? Now, so don't forget, I've already given you overvoting. Then this cancellation amount to 22 polling units. Then the total number of PVC collected in those places were 11,000 plus. then the total registered voter in those cancellation place, those places that are polling unit that were cancelled was in the excess of 13,000. But let's stick, because the margin of lead in the election, according to INEC guideline, is calculated by the PVC collected. So the total polling units, the total PVC collected in those polling units that were cancelled, that INEC, the returning officer, did not declare, were 11,000. Please pick the 11,000 and join it together with the 10,000. Over 10,000 votes from overvoting places, then you put that one aside. Then in the actual tabulation, I will just stick with 3 local governments, to be precise. In Isako West, in Ego, and in Oredo local government. Then even in Ikobaloka, I've mentioned 4 local government to be specific now. The result declared by INEC is not consistent with the tabulation on Form EC8A. So the result declared by INEC was not consistent with what you have on IREF, that Bukola, they released themselves, they uploaded themselves. So Bukola, this is the challenge with that election.
All right. Bukola, I'm going to ask you one question very quickly before I introduce our guest. Now, okay, very quickly, I'm going to bring in, first of all, our guest, Comrade Orobosa Omojo. He's the Director of Publicity, Edo APC Campaign Organization. Comrade, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning, and a very good morning to you. Comrade, can you hear me? Comrade...
Comrade, hang on. We're still trying to
establish your audio, please.
Yes. Perhaps, maybe if you are muted, you can unmute. Well, we're going to try and get that sorted. But I think until then, Judith, if you can continue with your question.
Yes. Bukola, very quickly, this polling units that you cited, the ones that they voted, the elections in those polling units were cancelled, but then the results were uploaded on the IREF. They were announced at the Collation Center. All those polling units, who won in those units?
So, the first thing I have to say is that when you upload Form EC40G, it doesn't show who won. You get it? It doesn't show who won. It will just tell you, the form will just show that, there's cancellation and the reason for cancellation. So the INEC official ticks those reasons for cancellation. In some places, they said BVAS was not used. In some places, they cited overvoting. In some places, they cited disruption. So, but they don't, because it's cancelled, they don't put the figures there.
Right.
And also, let me say that our report is not actually saying, whoever, this is the person that won or not. Our report is only saying, INEC, check your figure. Is not consistent with what you put out. There are irregularities in the election.
And with these irregularities, what then do you, in your solution, in preferring solutions and recommendations, do you recommend that the elections be redone again so that these irregularities can be either be captured and be more succinct in terms of result and capturing voter apathy, suppression, and even overvoting?
So I think the election cannot be done again now because the results have been declared. The only body that can order the re-election to take place is the court, and I'm sure maybe the party concerned will go to court and then do that. However, going forward, in the coming election, we are going to Ondo election. What are the recommendations we are putting for? The recommendation we are putting for, according to Section 65 of the Electoral Act, which give INEC administrative power to review results within 7 days. Administrative power to review results within 7 days. So the question is, why on earth will INEC be rushing to to declare results when you still have a space of 7 days to review the result in case there are any complaints? So there are people that we have seen a situation where the returning officer said he declared result under duress. We have seen the result. We have seen the situation whereby there are arithmetic errors. There are like what some of those political parties were saying, look, our result was not consistent with what you released. Then in some collation center, people were chased away. And they move the collation to the state headquarters. So what it means is that is a question mark. So what we are now saying is that INEC need to activate that section 65 to be able, to administratively review results within that 7 days, so that all party should be satisfied, and then it has to be transparent. It is not what you declare. So, if you follow that process, it is just as if they are doing a child's play. So the returning officer will come, read out the result. Then the state returning officer will say any observation, and then somebody will raise up, political party will raise up at their hand and say, look, we have issue with the result declared. This is our number, or this doesn't reflect what we have. And then the next thing you will hear is noted, and they move on and declare. Right. Then why did you ask? So we need to be able to address grievances. And let me say, for the sake of the country, because this is not about a political party, because the political party that benefit today may not benefit in other states.
On that note, Bukola, I was going to ask you a very interesting question.
That is very, very good for the country.
On that note, Bukola, I wanted to know, with all the details that you've given, the numbers, the figures that you've very specifically given, very interesting, but you left out exactly who the culprits were. What parties were responsible for all of these malpractice that we heard from the two reports, Kimpact and Yaga? Could you tell?
Unfortunately, let me use the word unfortunately, tabulating the result, 18 political parties benefited from this. 18 political benefited from these inconsistencies. However, of course, you see that some benefited more, but all of them were actually allocated votes that different from what you have on IREF. So possibly, if the vote, and this is our submission, if the vote truly reflects what we have on IREF, truly reflect the wishes of the people, maybe we will have had a supplementary election because the margin of lead will have been very close, but because of that inconsistency, the margin of lead was extended. Probably that election will have gone into a supplementary.
Thank you so much for that one. Let's see now if we're able to speak to Comrade Orobosa Omojo. Unfortunately, we can't seem to establish with him. But we do have the representative from the PDP who is joining us now. It's none other than Eseosa Iwore. He is the spokesperson for Asoi Ogi Campaign Council for the PDP. Well, thank you so much, sir, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Thank you.
Now, you most likely have heard, from our guest here, Bukola Idowu, who's part of Kimpact, and they're one of the observers, and I've put out a report pointing out all of the irregularities during the gubernatorial elections, particularly indicting all 17 parties that participated in the elections. What are your reactions to their report? Let's start from there.
The last Saturday's election in Edo will go down in history as the worst election to have been conducted by INEC in our electionary history. Since 1999, we have not seen such brazen manipulation of figures, deduction, addition, subtraction, and all what have you. It was a rape. It was a rape and authoritative confiscation of the will and mandate of the good people of Edo State, who trooped out en masse to elect a new leader to succeed Governor Godwin Obaseki, who has done commendably well in building a solid foundation for cross-cultural development in Edo State. But the APC and INEC, well, I wouldn't know if INEC had some scores to settle with Edo, because the manipulations was brazen, the addition of votes for the APC was brazen, it was authoritative, it was clear, it was open, very obvious to the visible to the blind and audible to the deaf. At a point, collation of results was moved because this election has processes. At the unit level, the PDP had flawed the APC clear, fair and square. The PDP had flawed, but from the point of collation of results, that was where the issue started. At a point, the EDOREC became a collation officer. Collation of results is a task exclusively reserved for collation officers. But you could see the INEC rec in Edo collating results by himself and chase down the PDP agents from the collation center. And the collation of results was moved from where it was there, because there is a ward collation center for every ward across local governments. Then from there is a LGA collation center for every local government areas across the states. And from there, you now move all the results to the state INEC office, where the final sorting is going to be done, and the results are announced. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, but I want to jump in there while I have your attention. Now, the reports actually damned all political parties. At the helm here of this year, the two major parties, PDP and APC, are not left out. The governor-elect has also extended a handshake or friendship to the other candidates, but it was refused by the candidate of the PDP. What's your take, first off, on the fact that the reports are indicting even the PDP in this instance?
The situations where you had some votes given to the, I think there were one or two situations where INEC even allocated votes to PDP. That was systemic, so that the eyes of the world will not be on them. Because particularly in Okpebholo, where I come from, we had won the APC with about 41 to 43,000 votes. But they kept cutting down, they kept subtracting votes, taking votes from the PDP, adding up to the APC. Despite all that, they tore our votes and tore as best as they could. Yet they lost that local government to the PDP because during the electioneering, we had come out fully to talk to our people. The people were ready. And though people trooped out en masse, because a lot of people really didn't expect the crowd that trooped out on Saturday to be that much. But you could see the enthusiasm in Edo people. You could see the readiness to elect their leaders. That's why Ighodalo and Saudi. But the INEC in cahoots with the APC and the police, they messed up the entire exercise and made it look like a child's play on Saturday.
All right. Well, comrade, we're going to come back to you shortly, but first we need to go on a short break. You're watching Breakfast Extra on News Central TV. We're doing an overview of the Edo gubernatorial elections and pointing out the irregularities as reported by Yaga and Kimpact, observers of the elections. We'll take a break. There's more after this. Stay with us.
And you're welcome. So, just before the break, we were talking about the review of the Edo elections from earlier. We're being joined by our guests one after the other, and we're joined by Comrade Orobosa from Edo. He's the campaign... Hang on a second, I've got to get that there right. Comrade Orobosa, Director of Publicity, Edo APC Campaign Organization. He joins us, and we are hoping that we can get one or two reactions from you from the reports that have dropped from Kimpact and Yaga, noting that they have implicated all political parties. Now, Comrade, I want you to first of all give us a 1-minute entry of your take on this, because we have to go on the news. And when we come back, we'll be giving you the floor. But what's your take initially?
First and foremost, I think the Yaga Africa and the Kimpact report are what I call the data corruption. Because first, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the coverage area to assume such kind of, responsibility that they have been given. Are you there?
Yes, we are.
can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, great. So you can have polling unit in Edo State that is over 4,519. And Yaga said they had 300 stationary observers. And that they went ahead, they equally had what you call it, 25 roving observers. For crying out loud, 25 roving observers to 4,519 polling units. As far as I'm concerned, Yaga and Keeper should stop observing elections in Nigeria. You can't stay in your hotel, in the comfort of your hotel room, monitor election via television, and you come out and sit there in the cozy hotel room and write your report and assume that report is a collectivity of everything that you saw in the feed. I didn't see Yaga in my local government. I didn't see Yaga in the 22 units in my ward. So as far as I'm concerned, what Yaga and Keeper just did amounts to data corruption. And they must be questioned. INEC must sanction them. And professionals in our university must call for their data and verify whatever they are bundling as reports on Edo State election.
Comrade Dobrosa, thank you for that entry. We're going to go on a break to take the news, which Judith is going to be bringing us. Please do stay, because when we get back, we've got more to ask you regarding your submission. Let's do the news now. Judith, thank you.
And we bring you the breakfast headlines this hour, and we begin by telling you that the Nigeria Police Force has added 2 more charges to the ones filed against the End Bad Governance protesters at the Federal High Court in Abuja. This was at the resumed trial on Friday, where the prosecution also arraigned a new protester among these initially arraigned. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu reports.
The only female protester, Angel Innocent, currently on trial, now enjoying her freedom. On the other hand, Michael Adaramoye, also called Lenin, and a few others, seen in handcuffs, continue to work to meet up with their bail conditions before they can regain their freedom. The resumed trial saw a new protester arraigned, making the total number of protesters on trial to be 11, with 2 amended charges slammed on them, a situation their lawyer says is very disheartening.
It is something that flimsy charges that is unbecoming of a prosecution to add that particular charges. That is terrorism. I don't even know why terrorism or protest became a terrorism act. Well, although we sincerely appreciate the kind ruling of the court, which they granted all the defendants, or admitted all the defendants to bail.
One additional person was arrested, who is also linked to the charge. And that is why the charge was amended and to include him. So, and today we apply, and the court granted the application for amendment. And that is why a fresh plea was taken. Because once a charge has been amended, a fresh plea of the defendant had to be taken.
Meanwhile, trial judge Emeka Nwite has maintained that bail granted to all the protesters stands. The trial continues on November 8th and 11th this year. In Abuja for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
And now to judicial matters. As part of the programs lined up to formally herald the 2024-2025 legal year of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, will swear in 87 new senior advocates of Nigeria on Monday at the main courtroom of the court. A statement by the Director of Information and Public Relations, Festus Akande, on Friday said that the CJN will deliver a State of the Judiciary address with a view to highlighting the performance of the Supreme Court in particular and the Nigerian judiciary in general in the 2023-2024 legal year. In the same vein, other leading stakeholders in the justice sector will present speeches bordering on the state of the justice sector of the country. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arrested former Taraba State Governor Darius Ishaku, over his alleged involvement in a 27 billion naira fraud case. Ishaku is facing 15 counts of criminal breach of trust, misappropriation and diversion of public funds. According to the EFCC, the former governor allegedly embezzled 1.01 billion naira between August 2015 and March 2016 from the 2.5% contingency fund of the Taraba State Bureau of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs. He's also accused of siphoning 3.348 billion naira from local government funds for personal use and diverting another 639 billion naira for his own benefit. The Kebbi state government is appealing for support over the flood in the state, saying 329,000 houses have been destroyed by the disaster, while 858,000 hectares of farmlands have been washed away. The government said the farmlands contain crops such as rice, millet, guinea corn, sorghum and beans, as well as other varieties. The Kebbi State Commissioner for Information and Culture, Yakubu Birni Kebbi, gave the statistics at a briefing in Birni Kebbi on Friday. Birni Kebbi made it clear that the enormity of the flooding, the consequent havoc caused, and the level of mitigation required have overwhelmed the state government, despite what it has put on the ground to provide succor to the victims. And we head now to West Africa, where a minister in Senegal's former government has been jailed on charges of extortion, embezzlement, and of course money laundering during his previous role as head of the National Lottery. Lat Diop headed the National Lottery from 2020 and then served as sports minister from 2023 to 2024 under ex-president Macky Sall. He is the first former government minister to be detained under the new authorities who took office in April. President Diomaye Faye and his Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko have repeatedly said they will seek accountability from the previous administration.
Président Macky Sall a menti au peuple, a menti aux partenaires, a tripatouillé les chiffres pour donner une image économique, financière et budgétaire qui n'avait rien à voir avec la réalité. Même si nous soupçonnions et même si nous avions quelques éléments de preuve que la situation du pays n'était pas au beau fixe, nous étions loin de nous imaginer que les choses étaient si catastrophiques. Nous allons demander aux Sénégalais de consentir à des efforts extrêmement importants les années à venir. Le ministre de l'économie en a abordé certains sur la subvention, sur la fiscalité.
And now to East Africa. A medical source told reporters on Friday that 48 people have been killed in 2 days of raids by Sudanese paramilitaries on the Darfur city of Al-Fasher, following international calls for an end to the nation's suffering. According to a medical source of Al-Fasher Teaching Hospital, as paramilitary forces and the regular army continue to battle for control of North Darfur's capital, artillery fire from the Rapid Support Forces killed 30 people and wounded many others on Friday alone. And that's all of the Breakfast headline we can take at this hour. I am Judith at TB. Breakfast Extra continues. Stay here.
Hey, welcome back. From before the news, we were talking about the Kimpak Yaga reports that have come under plenty of contention, especially by parties inside of Edo State, and that actually were also, well, in the mix when it comes to the elections from last week, Saturday. We had with us Comrade Robusta from earlier, and we still have Bukola Ido with us. Now, Bukola, I'm going to come to you straight up because we have just heard from Comrade Robusta, who said that the method of gathering these details from the Kimpak team and also the Yaga team was flawed. He says, according to him, you can't stay in your hotel rooms and put together these figures. What's your response to that, Bukola?
Not the correct picture. So there are methodology of getting most of these things done. The same methodology was used in 2015 and it favored APC. In 2019, it favored APC. So if it doesn't favor them now, and then I'm wondering why the methodology is no longer good. And so the same methodology has been used in past election, and it favored the political party, and they commended the job. You recall, I can tell you, I'm not even a part of, I can tell you that in 2019, 2023, thereabout, I remember a team from APC led by, led by former governor, former minister, Fashola, was even at Yaiga to look at their methodology and commended that. So, but let's leave that. That is Yaiga. But for us, it's not even about our own methodology. Was purely analyzing what INEC released on IREF, downloading it, and then we have that manpower. We did that for Kogi, we did that for Imo, we did that for Bayelsa. The report is on our website. So analyzing this, we are not even saying, hey, APC, you cheat, or PDP, you cheat. We are only addressing INEC and say, INEC, look, what you release, what you declare, and statistically tabulating what is on IREF, they are not consistent. Go and release that. Why that we unsettle a particular political party? That is why I'm wondering.
All right then, Comrade Robosa. Now, many people have also told that instead of addressing the claims by these bodies, the APC is discrediting, just like you have just done from earlier. But the question now is, what measures were put in place from before the elections by the APC to ensure that there were none of these instances of perhaps maybe vote buying or underage voters? What measures at all was suggested by the APC?
Vote buying. Let us dwell a bit on the Yaga and Kimpa report. My young man from Kimpa, I sympathize with him. He just exposed the inadequacy of the report that they released. He did say that they relied on results on the IRF that were posted by INEC. And that is the real issue here. The PDP, through their situation room in Government House, had planned with the ad hoc staff to rig the election via the IRF. Let me tell you how. And I gave this scenario last time I spoke on this program. The PDP took the rigging of election to a far distant measure this time. And it's good that it came out, they were able to bear their facts this time, so that Nigerians can become suspect of the IRF. What they were doing, sir, across and through their 18 local government chairmen, don't forget the PDP controls the 18 local government. And you remember when INEC published the list of ad hoc staff, APC were at a disadvantage of the number of ad hoc staff that they had and the number of agents we had. PDP had thought that they won. I will use an example of what happened in the faith, and I said it the last time. The youth corps that were sent to each of the units, sir, many of them were compromised by the PDP council chairman. And either at gunpoint or either they have compromised them, they will ask them to send the reports, the results that they have cooked up straight to the IRF without double checking it. So they thought, and their situation room were compiling these fake illicit results that were coming up. So when I hear about the argument that my young man from Kimpa just said now that they relied on the IRF for them to write their report, I think what INEC did at the point they knew that the results that the ad hoc staff were sending up there to the IRF were distorted. They were compromised either through monitoring or violence, attending the violence on each of these units. And the young persons, the young girls and boys, were coerced to upload this result. So what INEC did at the point later in the afternoon, they knew they were getting results, they were getting reports. Who was saying report to INEC to say what they are uploading to IRF does not tally with the result, the physical result that has been collected. That's what happened. So I have laid that bare. Going back to say what was the preparation we made, first and foremost, APC campaigned tremendously to the nook and cranny of the state. And we were able to show to the people at the grassroots to say, hey, we are not the government in power. We don't have the resources. Of course, we know how much PDP paid to some of our members and leaders to decamp from APC. Sometimes they were paying them as much as $35,000 US dollars for one person to decamp. In some cases, they added SUV. So we knew that we couldn't match them cash. So what we did was that this and told our members, ensure that you go home. Especially people, don't forget 15 out of the 18 local government area we have are rural in nature. If you take out here, we find maybe we have 14. Our leaders, our supporters were put on the know that, hey, this election is between the people and Baseki. And how we were able to tell our person, we were able to tell our members, our leaders, so that they can educate the voters and say, we don't have the money to give to you, but please vote for good leadership. That was what we did.
All right. Now, I'm going to extend a right of reply to none other than Comrade Ewure there. You just heard the allegations levied against the PDP by Comrade Omojo. What's your reply?
I want to believe that there are other individuals and groups other than Yaga and the Kimpat that has also condemned the processes ahead of the announcement of the results of the election. Even the former President Jonathan has also discredited the election. Only yesterday we saw Akpata Peter side calling on Nigerians to rise up and challenge the outcome of the Edo 2024 election. Omoyele Sowore, a notable rights activist in this country, has also condemned that election. So you have more Nigerians at home and in the diaspora coming out to fault that election. So can they also be wrong? So I just think that we are going to be depending on the courts. We are putting together our materials already. The manipulations, the irregularities, and the inconsistencies. I must commend Yaga for coming out courageously to condemn that election. That was not an election. Comrade Orobo Salmojo knows that it was not an election. He should provide his unit results. I can provide my unit result right now. In my unit, APC's got 10. I had 124. How many did PDP score in his unit? So people should be able to say the truth, whether it benefits them or not. What campaigns did they do? Did APC campaign? APC was banking on the federal government to help them in an election, in cahoots with the police and the army and other security agencies. We have our facts. Can all Nigerians be wrong? Can President Jonathan be wrong? No. Can Akpata Peter be wrong? No. Can Sowore be wrong? No. Can Yaga be wrong? Kimpa be wrong? There are other over 50 local and international observers. Not one has commended the processes leading to the announcement of the result. So what are you going to say? The election was a sham. It was a case of, like I told you earlier, I'm sure INEC had scores. I'm sure INEC had scores to settle with Edo, and that has been settled in the course of last Saturday. That has been settled. But we will approach the court with our materials, and we strongly believe, that the judiciary being the last hope of the common man, these irregularities will be repaired.
I'm asking a question here. If you please let me ask you this question. Now, these reports, these numbers that you're saying that you can actually bring out as proof, will they align with what was discovered by Kimpact or Yaga? The reports from Kimpact and Yaga did not absolve the PDP in any way. It also told that the PDP is also culpable in these malpractices as well. So what do you have to say about the involvement of the PDP in the election rigging?
Like I told you earlier, it was systemic. If for instance, like in my units was 6 Okpebholo, I just told you what the APC scored. That could have been manipulated at the collation level. That's why we are calling for unit results. That's why we are calling, because at the unit level, we have flawed the APC. I just told you APC got 10 in my unit, 10. 10 persons voted for the APC in my unit. Whereas in that same unit, 124 persons voted for the PDP and Labour only got 3. And this is the scenario across the entire state. This is the same scenario across the entire state. This is not a popular party. They cannot win a regular election. This was not a regular election. This was not a normal election. So at the unit level, we have flawed them. If you were to announce the result as it came from the unit, where would APC be today? Nowhere. But from that point of collation, you had IREC, you had the Edo Rec converting himself to a collation officer, which in itself is illegal and unacceptable. Then you had INEC relocating collation center from the designated collation centers straight to the INEC office, because when the results leaves the unit, they go to the World Collation Center. From the World Collation Center, they ought to go to the local government collation center. From the local government collation center, they move over to the states. But in this case, results were moved straight from the World Collation Center to the states. So what happened at the IBA Collation Center that they could not collect results? And they changed that to our agents, accommodating only the APC agents. Particularly in my local government, Okpebholo, I just told you that they tore our results, our votes in Okpebholo. They tore it, but yet we won. Oroboso, my senior brother, is aware. He's aware of all these facts.
All right. Now,
so what are you talking about? You can't call this an election that nearly every individual, an election that nearly every group that came to observe that election are condemning. You are still calling it an election because you have been declared by INEC as winner. INEC only declared you as winner because of the agreements you have with INEC. But we are going to the courts.
Comrade Omojo, 2 things here I'm going to take away, and I want you to react to them. The first one, both our other guests have just said that this results is not in favor, or rather, the report from Yaga Africa and Kimpact is not in favor of APC, and so this is why your reaction is saying that their reports and their reports of the election is a sham, and the way they came about this report is a sham. I'm going to ask you about that. With their statements, is this true that because it's not in the favor of APC that this is a sham? Number one. Number two, Mr. Esosa there also made reference to saying that your candidate of the APC did not at any given time not campaign to the level of their own candidate. What's your reaction to that?
What Esosa has just said this morning is in line with the pattern of the PDP. Lies, lies, lies. Now, let me take it. Kimpact and Yaga and Ateto Peterside and the failed former president, Jonathan, 4 of them, they can replace 51 accredited INEC observers, sir. And ma'am, and Esosa, listen, you are a media person. I'm sure you have read in the media space that the Center for Credible Leadership and Citizens Awareness, CCLA, accredited 51 of them, and they came out with their reports just this week that the election was credible and it reflects the will of Edo State people. So if you have 51 accredited election observers coming out with a statement and you are now bringing outsiders, which is my quarrel. People outside the 18 local government can't come to our state and give us a pass mark or a failure mark. Just 2 days ago, the civil society group in Edo State, they be consistent about civil society. They met and issued their report. And it reflected the same way that CCLA, the 51 accredited INEC election monitors, it was entirely with their report. So if all these persons who eat from the same, who buy food from the same booker that we buy, who goes to urban market to buy items as well, who we see every day, who are embedded in our 18 local government and the 4,519 thereabout polling units, said the election was credible. APC will not give a who won't bug for what Peter said we say from his Banana Island or Victoria Island, or what Jonathan will say from his Bayelsa, or what Yaga will say from Abuja, or Kimpa will say that I've admitted to say they collected the result in Ireland for them to write their report. That's being said. I want to commend your reporter, in you Central Reporter. He summed everything up. And that's how investigative journalists carry out their report. He said this, and I quote, he said, the outcome of the election depends on where you were, or where you were. He said, from the area that I covered, I saw this. Most parties were buying votes. That is unbiased reporting. Now, let me say this here again. As far as I know, I have seen successive administration coming out. I have 36 years in grassroots reporting. We are accredited by INEC to cover this election. So we had reports that were brought in, many of it, including they see me as a mentor in terms of rural reporting, community reporting. I am unbiased when I report about, because I don't even know the part I will belong to, whether I will be pro this or against that. Up to about 4-5 months ago, I was a very good no friend. I'm still friend to Mr. Ighodalo. I supported him in 2020 against all because we didn't want anybody to become a godfather.
Was it that
and
time?
We stopped Gio at this time.
Comrade, 2020, was it the time when you decamped from APC to PDP?
No, at all. In 2020, what was that? We had a collectivity of comrades who just believe, okay, in 2007, I was a spokesman to Comrade Adams Ali Oshomole. And one of the pivotal messages that we gave them was that bye-bye to godfatherism. So in 2020, when we saw the trace of reenactment and reintroduction of godfatherism into our political space, we fought back. That was what happened. I didn't need to decamp nothing. So I'm a foundation member of AC, ACN, AC, APC. I have always remained there.
In fighting godfatherism, have you not seen your candidate go to kneel before the president to shake him and tell him thank you for his support, which now points to the statement of federal might from Comrade Eseosa's submission?
Okay, let me take it this way. What we forbid here in Edo State is that in the electoral process, we don't want to see any finger coming into play to tell us who to vote for. Do you know why I got attracted to the APC, man? Against all odds, all the godfathers wanted a particular candidate or aspirant as a candidate. And this young man from nowhere without the support of anybody. In fact, he made all the godfathers to fight themselves. He came out from nowhere. So if he went to thank the president, I think it's the right thing to do is, the president is the national leader. He's the #1 leader of APC. He has the right. Whether he's going to roll on the floor, he's going to sleep on the floor. We are Africans. We have a way of expressing ourselves. In Yoruba land, you will see it, no matter how wealthy you are before a king, you are before an elder. You roll on the floor. So that does not show to say one person's head. All true, we don't have anywhere. Anyway, like one former president said in this country to say the election will be a do or die. Or like how our governor here said that Nigeria will burn if Ighodalo is not elected as governor. You know, so we didn't hear Mr. President did not say anything. He allowed us, there are no report to say Okpebholo was forced of the Edo people.
Comrade, we're really out of time. But it's very interesting that all of a sudden we're respecting our elders, but then it's not godfatherism. There's no more time to dig deeper into this. But I appreciate you both, and also our guest from Kimpact, and that's Bukola Idowu, and I'll let Mzino do the rest of the outro.
Thank you. I'm just going to say thank you to the gentlemen who have joined us today to talk about this. It's been very robust. We might come back to you guys for resource for other topics, especially as it concerns Edo State. Thank you indeed. Now, we got a very short break, and when we get back, we've got more inside of Breakfast Extra coming your way. Ah, yes, how I missed the satirical cartoons or comedy, if you want to call it that way, that we always bring to you every weekend. Last week we couldn't because we're covering the gubernatorial elections in Edo State. So this week we're bringing it to you, but it's going to be no different because inside of the news strips today you will find a predominance of Edo matters. Hey, they're the talk of the town now. So let's take our very first one. And of course, Judith is going to be joining me to analyze these very interesting pieces of news that are, well, easier to swallow, if you get what I mean. So let's start with our very first one. And our very first one this morning is from Business Day newspaper. Now, Judith, very interesting here, as you can see who our, what do they call them now? Attending doctor, I don't know, is. Any familiarity here? Do you know who these characters might be, Judith, if I was to ask you? But of course you would know now.
Of course I know. I mean, starting with the man with the glasses and the man with the hat on, with very symbolic signs. Iconic. There that we know.
Exactly.
I was going to leave it there. I know who that is. I don't know who's in bed, though.
It's the average Nigerian. But there's something I need you to note. While the voice bubble says, I know about your suffering and I have come to remind you of your pain, but be patient. Those words are just buzzwords. Your pain, be patient, because Nigerians are all patients now. I mean, hey, with a terrible health sector anyway. But there's something I need you to notice. Judith, what is odd about this cartoon here from Business Day? Look at it critically, please.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses, dude.
Oh, but, Judith, when it hits, it hits.
Oh, there, he's taking the treatment. He's taking the blood. Oh, there we go. Ooh, let's see that. Let's see that.
Booyah. Ooh. That's exactly what it is. While the governance of Nigeria, well, this cartoon is trying to depict, seems to be, well, telling us that it's trying to help us, they also at the same time seem to be getting rich off of us, is what it's trying to say. But I loved it. And tell you what, I didn't know this until I took another look and saw, oh, where's that drip line going? Oh. But very interesting here.
Drip.
Makes it easy to swallow, but this is the condition of Nigeria.
Drip.
It's not play real life. Let's just put it that way. So let's check another one again. Judith, this time it's also from Business, and I love the way Business Day really has these colorful pieces of news.
I'm there. I want to find out who the satirist is. It's just
it's beautiful.
Divine, sublime.
This is Nigeria. Oh, sorry, scratch that. Edo State. It's a very peculiar a piece here because the same thing that happened in Nigeria, what they're trying to say, is exactly what's just happened to Edo State. I mean, hey, you're running from one frying pan and you're hugging a cactus, saying I'd rather have this than what I'm coming from. And even if it brings me pain, I'm still going to stay there. Does this depict Edo State right now, do you think, Judith? What's that song you started the show with again?
I'm sorry, oh. I'm sorry for Nigeria.
Can you hear the Afrobeat drums? And the shakere. That's exactly what it seems like. You're not wrong. Sorry would be actually the track for Edo, it would seem, from this cartoon. Now, I didn't say it. They said it. Let's move on now. We've got others to take. What do we have now? What newspaper are we going to go from? Now, do remember that these are all pieces from during the week. And we have the Daily Trust newspaper still on Edo. Edo taking the spotlight for today's show. Edo gubernatorial polls won and lost. And that's Obaseki, it would seem, I think, inside the car, leaving. However, the air bubble here, buy your sneakers, run from witches, demons, EFCC, and the likes after leaving office. Do I need to say more?
No, you don't.
I mean, Edo State is known for a very, when you talk about Edo, you know what they always say. That's where you find people early in the morning hanging on rooftops because the fuel they had didn't... I'm sorry.
I'm not there.
I'm just trying to explain why this is funny to people who do not know. Benin especially is a town that's known for, in quotes, and this is just, urban legend, for witchcraft and all sorts like that. So that's what it's trying to say. So that you can run from them because they're coming after you now, Basiki, it would seem. But funny enough, it is just one person's expression of what they think the system is like.
Absolutely. They have creative license to do what they can with their...
We've run out of time. I had a couple more that I wanted to show, but it's okay. No problem. But Judith, thank you very much for analyzing the viewing.
That's quite the fun. It's always fun.
It is. That one with the drip, though.
Yeah.
Sublime. Fantastic. Thank you also for joining us and helping us go through the very few pieces of grand, exceptional artistical work put to news, like I like to say. We'll bring you more, perhaps maybe in other editions of Breakfast Extra. Thank you for joining. Stay tuned. We've got more coming your way inside this hour.
And we shift our focus now back to Edo State, where tensions have risen among traders following a protest against their former leader over a 100 million naira grant allegedly provided by former Governor Adams Oshiomhole in 2013. The traders are accusing the ex-leader, popularly known as Madam Blackie, of diverting the funds meant for their welfare. Now, the grant intended to support small and medium-sized businesses has resurfaced in the public eye as traders demand an explanation for how the money was managed and why they have yet to see any tangible benefits.
Now, as tempers flare, this issue has become a lightning rod for discontent among the traders, many of whom say they've been left in financial limbo for over a decade. Now, with growing frustration, the Edo traders have called on the government to intervene and hold the former trade union leader accountable for the alleged mismanagement of the funds. But despite their efforts to get a response, Madam Blackie has remained unreachable, deepening the sense of injustice. Now, joining us today to discuss the issue is Lucky Orukpe, the president of the Traders Welfare Union of Nigeria. We would also like the viewers to know that we tried to reach out to Madam Blackie for her comments, but unfortunately she was unavailable and we could not reach her. But thank you very much for joining us, Lucky. Thank you. Now, Lucky, let's get started already. If you can give us or walk us through the origins of the 100 million naira grant, what was the purpose of the grant and who was it supposed to benefit in Edo State?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Evangelist Comrade Lucky Orukpe, the president of the Traders Welfare Union of Nigeria. I am joining you all the way from Edo State, Benin. Yeah, 2013, August, Adams Oshiomhole do a thank you party to Edo Market women at Imagwero Hall. When Adams Oshiomhole was addressing the women on that day, thanking them for supporting him for second tenure, and he called on Blackie Ogiame and promised the next day that he's going to release 100 million naira for Edo Market women in 3 senatorial districts of Edo State. 18 local government of Edo State, that Madam Blackie should reach out to the poorest of the poorest of the poorest of the traders inside the market to disburse the 100 million to those poor traders. So the next day, the 100 million was released to Madam Blackie, to Blackie Ogiame. So I was part of the process that mobilized market women to that Imagwero Hall on that day. Blackie Ogiame personally come to my office to tell me to mobilize market women in the 13 market in Oredo to Imagwero Hall. On getting to that hall on that day, he did not allow the women to enter unless they buy green hair tie from her. And almost all of them, because they were expecting benefit from that meeting, they buy their green hair tie and they enter the meeting. So when Adams Oshiomhole was about to close that welcome party that day, he made a pronouncement again that Blackie should make sure He reached out to Edo market women in 3 senatorial districts and 18 local governments of Edo State. So for us from the Traders Welfare Union, we were very happy that petty traders in Edo State have been supported by Dansali Oshomole. But to our greatest surprise, from 2013 to 2015 to 2021, I did a research in Edo North. I did not see any market woman that benefit from the 100 million. I do a research again in Edo Central. I did not see a market woman, apart from only one woman that threatened Blackie that she will protest, that called to Traders Welfare Union office.
All right.
Blackie cornered the woman and give the woman 50,000 naira from Edo Central. In Edo South, I did not see any woman that benefited.
All right, Mr. Lucky.
All right.
And I write petition. I petitioned to EFCC 2021. This is the acknowledgement letter. On 2021, on the 13th of August, 2021, I petitioned to the state governor. I petitioned to ICPC. The state governor was the governor Baseki. I have the petition with me. I also petitioned to ICPC. I petitioned to DSS, to Commissioner of Police, and I petitioned to the Deputy Governor and the Chief of Staff there.
Okay. Evangelist Evangelist Orukpe, well, we've seen that. Because we're pressed for time, we have to quickly get on with this conversation. Now, you just said that with your findings, you've reached out to all these organizations, and in also trying to get a hold of Madam Blackie. We understand that we couldn't get a hold of her. She's unavailable to comment on this. And we also do understand that she swore to a certain traditional god of her innocence. But have there been any formal efforts on your part and your union to contact her directly or through legal channels to get clarity on the grant's status, whether or not she received it or how it was spent? Very quickly, because we're pressed for time.
Yes, Blackie has agreed that Oshomole pay 100 million to her account. It's on television in Benin. ITV showed it about last week after our protest, that it was 100 million Oshomole paid to his account. Oshomole is saying no. On that day, because of the crowd that he saw, it's 200 million he gives to Blackie. You can call Oshomole to confirm. So now, I protested 17th September 2024 again. Our demands are very simple. We want to see the process that Blackie have used to disperse the 100 million to the poorest of the traders in the market, in the 10 local governments.
Now, Mr. Lucky.
We want to see the
Mr.
process.
Lucky, I'm gonna have to cut you short. My apologies, but we must take sports now, as we have Favor standing by. We're gonna come back to this conversation and let you finish. We still have plenty of questions to ask you regarding this instance, so do bear with us. But for now, let's go in for sports with Favor here with us on Breakfast Extra. Favor, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, Mazino. A beautiful morning to you. Lots of things happening in the world of sports, from the grassroots and, of course, to the Africa and, of course, the world at large. And it's time to bring you up to speed with what is happening, especially from home. Plateau United Queens have claimed the Northern Conference title after a trailing 1-0 victory over Moje Queens feeders in the final. Earlier, Nazareth Queens secured third place, drawing goalless with, of course, Adonai Taraba Queens, but winning 4-2 on penalties at the old parade ground in Abuja. The tournament showcased intense competition, ultimately leading to Plateau United Queens finishing first, with Moje Queens as runners-up and Nazareth and Adonai Taraba Queens in third and fourth, respectively. As Northern Conference champions, Plateau United Queens will advance to the national finals, where they will compete against Southern Conference champions Cats Ladies for the ultimate title on Sunday, September 29, 2024. Still talking football, we move on to the African continent, where Zamalek triumphed over Al Ahly 4-3 on penalties after a 1-1 draw to win the CAF Super Cup in Riyadh on Friday. Al Ahly took a 1-0 lead in the 44th minute with a disputed penalty from Wissam Abu Ali. Meanwhile, Zamalek, of course, equalized in the 77th minute when substitute Nassar Mansi scored with his first touch. During the shootout, Zamalek converted all 4 penalties, while Al Ahly missed 2, with Mohamed Awad saving from Yahya Atia Allah and Abu Ali hitting the post. Now, this victory marked Zamalek's 5th Super Cup title in 6 attempts, while Al-Ahly remains the most successful club with 8 wins, though they have now suffered 4 losses. All right, congratulations to Zamalek. I mean, the CAF Super Cup played right there in Saudi Arabia. It shows that football is really going all the way. And to wrap up, of course, sports update, let's let you know that Canadian soccer great Christian Sinclair, the all-time scorer in international football, will retire in November at the end of 2024 National Women's Soccer League season. The 41-year-old forward who netted 190 goals in 331 international matches stepped back from the national team duty last December, but continues to play for the Portland Terns. In her 12th season with the Terns, the club plans to honor her on November 1st, following the conclusion of their regular season. Sinclair was instrumental in securing the Terns' inaugural National Women's Soccer League Championship in 2013, along with titles in 2017 and 2022. She has also played in 6 World Cups and won an Olympic gold medal at the Tokyo Games, scoring in 5 World Cups alongside Brazil's Mata. All right, that wraps it up on Sports Update at this time. We'll go over to Mazino standing by.
Well, thank you very much, Favor, for bringing us sports this morning here. I didn't know I needed all that information, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, indeed. Now let's do a short break and then the news and then back into our discussions for Breakfast Extra. All right, now you're welcome back as we discuss the issue with the 100 million naira seems to have been disbursed by former governor of Edo State, Oshiomhole. And we have Lucky here, who is the president of the Traders Union in Edo State currently, and who has written many petitions, like he said from before, regarding these amounts. Now, Lucky, thank you for hanging on and staying with us. Lucky, now the question is regarding these amounts. Has Madam Blackie, has she come out to tell that she actually received these amounts? Has she also noted perhaps maybe that these amounts were disbursed like they were meant to traders who were of need?
Yes, Blackie has come out to tell Edo people that Adansale Oshiomhole pay 100 million naira into his account. And the 100 million is not for Adansale Oshiomhole did not give her for birthday party.
Okay, then.
He did not give her to go and build the filling station or build house. It's for market
hang on a second, Lucky. I have a continuation to that question. Regarding the 100 million naira that was given in 2013, why has it taken so long for anybody to want to bring anyone who's responsible to book regarding these amounts? 2013 is 11 years ago. I can't imagine what the worth of that money is right now for anybody who perhaps wants to go into business. But why has it taken so long for that matter to come out to...
You know, when you fight corruption, corruption will fight you back. When we protest to EFCC, we protest to everywhere. Blackie told us openly that he is going to spend some of the money to sweep the matter under carpet. But for us, for me as a human right, even if it's going to take me 30 years, 40 years, to make sure Blackie shows us the process and the beneficiary, we are not asking too much. We want to see the names of the beneficiaries. We want to know the process and the way and manner he exports the 100 million to different accounts to beneficiaries. We have not seen any market woman in Edo State that benefit from the 100 million. I've been fighting since 2013. EFCC refused to act. Edo State government, Mr. Gordon Obaseki, refused to act. I do not belong to any political party. I'm a human rights activist. What we are saying, we are talking about accountability. As a learned trader, that money was made for poorest of the traders in Edo State. We still have some women that sell okra with 10,000. We still have some women that sell pure water like I said with 5,000. Those are the women that are supposed to benefit, not me. So Blackie should come out to show us the names and the people that benefit from that 100 million. As we speak today.
Evangelist, because we're pressed for time, very quickly, your final reaction. What is the next step for your union? What are they going to do? How are they going to get their monies? What is the next step for them? Very quickly, because we're out of time.
The next step, by Monday next week, if Edo State EFCC refuse to arrest Blackie and investigate Blackie, Edo traders will take the protest to Abuja EFCC office. We will go to Abuja EFCC office. Since Edo State EFCC office, they cannot act for issue of corruption. EFCC said if you see corruption, you blow whistle. Now that we have blow whistle of corruption, Edo EFCC refused to act, we are moving to Abuja office. We must get our justice. The people that the 100 million naira was made for, they should disburse the 100 million. If the disburse is already, they should show us the beneficiary's name, the signature, and the process that they use.
All right. Evangelist, many thanks. We appreciate you for coming on and just having this conversation with us.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go on a break, and then when we get back, Judith will be bringing us the news. Stay tuned.
Part of the programs lined up to formally herald the 2024-2025 legal year of the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, will swear in 87 new senior advocates of Nigeria on Monday at the main courtroom of the court. A statement by the Director of Information and Public Relations, Festus Akande, on Friday said that the CJN will deliver a State of the Judiciary address with a view to highlighting the performance of the Supreme Court in particular and the Nigerian judiciary in general in the 2023-2024 legal year. In the same vein, other leading stakeholders in the justice sector will present speeches bordering on the state of the justice sector of the country. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arrested former Taraba State Governor Darius Ishaka, who over his alleged involvement in a 27 billion naira fraud case. Ishaku is facing 15 counts of criminal breach of trust, misappropriation and diversion of public funds, all related to his tenure as governor between 2015 and 2021. According to the EFCC, the former governor allegedly embezzled 1.01 billion naira between August 2015 and March 2016 from the 2.5% contingency fund of the Taraba State Bureau of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs. He is also accused of siphoning 3.348 billion naira from local government funds for personal use and diverting another 639 million naira for his own personal benefit. Following the House of Representatives' resolution to investigate allegations of bribery against the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the Joint Committee of the House has extended an invitation to the chairman of the Commission, Ola Olukoyede. In a letter dated 27th September 2024, the committee asked the EFCC chairman and the Comptroller General of the Nigeria Correctional Service to appear on Monday, the 30th, with all official officers involved in the allegation. The allegation of bribery against the Anti-Graft Agency and the Nigeria Correctional Service followed a trending social media voice conversation involving one Idris Okuneye, a cross-dresser sentenced earlier this year to 6 months in prison for abuse of the naira. Away from politics and corruption charges, the Kebbi state government is appealing for support over the flood in the state, saying 329,000 houses have been destroyed by the disaster, while 858,000 hectares of farmlands have been washed away. The government said the farmlands contain crops such as rice, millet, giddy corn, sorghum, beans, and other varieties. The Kebbi State Commissioner for Information and Culture, Yakubu Bernie Kebbi, gave the statistics at a briefing in Bernie Kebbi on Friday. Bernie Kebbi said that it was clear that the enormity of the flooding, the consequent havoc caused, and the level of mitigation required have overwhelmed the state government, despite what it has put on the ground to provide succor to the victims. And now, away from that, development infrastructure upgrade, increased export and more investment are needed for growth in Africa. Business leaders in Africa agree that this is possible by Africans with collaborations between governments and the private sector. We have more in this report. Take a look.
No one will develop Africa except Africa.
The Managing Director and CEO, First Bank Nigeria, Olusegun Alebiosun, echoed the voice of reason at one of the side events of UNGA organized for Africa's private sector. But funding is a known difficulty, and it had and still is plaguing many across Africa due to high interests. Incidentally, unlike many other African nations who either held or lowered interest rates at the end of their respective September Monetary Policy Committee meeting, Nigeria's central bank hiked interest for the 5th time and further making business financing more expensive.
As inflation trend down and interest rates start coming down, of course the environment will become more stable, and then banks will be able to lend for economic development.
Another major challenge is the economic migration of young, talented Nigerians.
Now, obviously technology, because technology, you can be extremely mobile. You're young, it's an attractive sector. So it does impact us to the extent that you can't backfill as quickly as you'd like.
And to solve such, rest in public-private partnerships to proffer sustained solutions.
Well, the reality is governments across Africa, governments in Nigeria and other countries need to do a lot more in terms of creating the right kind of opportunities for these young people, not just in the tech space, whether it's in the medical space, whether it's in education or wherever it is, to find ways to encourage them to be meaningfully employed on the continent.
Truth be told, are African leaders doing enough to retain the army of youths or even adequately encourage their creativity? Are they listening or willing to make such reality possible in the near and distant future?
And that's all the headlines we can take at this hour. I am Judith TV. Coming up next is more on Breakfast Extra. Stay here.
Now this hour, we turn our spotlights to a groundbreaking event that marks a new chapter for News Central, our very first ever Diaspora Town Hall meeting in New York City. Now, this highly anticipated gathering aims to connect the global African diaspora with major influencers and thought leaders on the continent. We're proud to host this event, which serves as a platform for vibrant discussions around the critical issues facing diaspora Nigerians today. The right to vote is one of them. Now, this while also fostering stronger ties between the diaspora and their home country, Nigeria. From politics to governance to business and also technology, the town hall will provide valuable insight into the continent's future. Now, joining us already is Mr. Bernard Akede, our News Central correspondent, who is all the way in New York already and is ready to give us an update on how things are going. Bernard, we are jealous, aren't we, Judith?
No, I'm not.
But Judith, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bernard, thank you so much. Of course, from your face, you can see that you've been hard at work, covering the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. So well done, first of all. But let's get started very quickly and tell us about, what's to come for the town hall meeting for today in New York.
All right, thanks for having me, and good morning. I've lost track of the time. I just looked now and I saw that it's just past 5 a.m. over here. So that actually confused me a little bit. But to be honest, yeah, the town hall meeting, I'm expecting that it will be quite conversational and very, very interactive, because in the past few days that we've been here, we've been able to speak to a couple of Nigerians, and well, the truth is, Nigeria itself is a microcosm of the entire Africa. So if there's a challenge faced by Nigeria or Nigerians in the diaspora, best believe that part, if not all, of such challenge or challenges will be faced by other Africans. So I know it's a step at a time, but at some point, there will need to be these kind of conversations for all of Africa in the end. But coming back to Nigeria, so we certainly are expecting, as I said, a very conversational session. Because Nigerians here in New York, and I believe it's almost the same everywhere else in the diaspora, of course, do have their challenges. But I'll just summarize it by saying that the belief is, or rather, the reality is that Nigerians who work abroad are doing a lot to contribute to the GDP, of the country. So their money comes home and speaks a lot for them. The question is, why can't their vote also come home and speak a lot for them, as a matter of fact? So that's going to be the crux of the conversation. And I'm sure that, surrounding that, we would have several other issues that Nigerians in the diaspora would like to bring to the fore. My only challenge is that I'm just hoping that we would have enough time to package all of this and have a proper discussion.
Nicely put, because there's so much to unpack when it comes to voting, and now diaspora voting to come into the mix as well, with all the irregularities captured within the last off-cycle election with Edo State. A lot needs to be discussed when it comes to that, but also the lineup is impressive. Tell us a bit about the lineup and people to expect to speak during this town hall meeting.
Yeah, very, very impressive indeed. For the lineup, we'll start with, you talked about Dr. Obi Ezekwesili with her huge resume that you read out there. And then we have Abike Dabiri, who's the person in charge of NIDCOM, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission. We have someone from Nigerian Association of Nigerian Students Abroad. We have the Ezendigo, the Association of Nigerians here. We have Nigerian skilled workers. We have somebody representing them. We have another person. And then we have individuals in their own capacity who will be joining. But we have major groups of Nigerians having their representatives. And then, of course, while we're here, we randomly just give out flyers to people who will speak. As a matter of fact, it got to a point where we had to be careful, with the numbers of people who would have to speak on the panel, because, of course, as I mentioned, we have just so much time to put people together. Now, we're hoping that all these people do show up, and we believe they will. Certainly, if they do, these are policymakers in their own small corners and with their own groups. So you can only imagine what they'll be saying, who they'll be speaking for. Again, I'm just hoping that we are blessed with ample time so that we can unpack all of this.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, ample time is really the question we're going to ask. Well, it's starting what time there and what time here, just so our viewers know, so they can get ready. 4 p.m. here, right?
Yeah, and that's going to be 11 a.m., I beg your pardon, over here. And yes, 4 p.m. In Nigeria. 2 straight hours, 11 to 1 or 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., depending on what side of the globe you are. Yeah. But that's what we're having. And again, let God bless us with the right amount of time that we need. Because from the conversations, it's really, there's really a lot to discuss. Why Nigerians in diaspora cannot vote, how Nigerians in diaspora should be allowed to vote, talking about the contributions of Nigerians in diaspora, challenges of Nigerians in diaspora. And well, quickly, let me just chip this in. So a few days ago, I had the singular honor to interview the Minister for International Affairs, that's Ambassador Tugar, OON. And I threw that question to him right in between, the interview. And he said, well, Nigeria should take it a step at a time, that we haven't been able to conquer the challenges of elections back at home just yet. So we shouldn't be too quick to jump into diaspora voting. He's a sweet talker. So in as much as I enjoyed his response and his conversation, I don't want to preempt anything, but I'd leave it for, the audience and the rest to decide if there's a point in that. Because he did speak a lot. But of course, there's a whole lot more to discuss. I was hoping he'll be able to join us. Unfortunately, he said he has a very tight schedule. So that gives you an idea of the kinds of people that we'll be expecting and the kind of conversations we're going to have. I expect it to be fully packed and to be quite explosive.
Well, thank you very much, Bernard. Katie, that's a very interesting thought there. And I'm looking forward to it. 4 p.m. here, Nigerian time, and of course, 11 a.m. Where you're at in New York City. Please tell you what, do get some sleep before the town hall. We can see that you've been working so hard all the way from Unger 79 to now. Thank you very much, Bernard, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bernard there, having the time of his life from Unger to the town hall in New York. Can you see the jealousy?
Mazzino, please, we're going on a short break. Just don't mind Mazzino and his jealousy. We're going on a short break. When we come back on the other side, we turn our focus to Africa. Stay here.
Central TV presents the first ever international town hall meeting for Nigerians in diaspora. Theme: Harnessing the Power of the Diaspora, the Right to Vote. Keynote speaker: Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. Dr. Obi Ezekwesili is the President of Human Capital Africa and Senior Economic Advisor at the Africa Economic Development Policy Initiative. Dr. Ezekwesili has served as a former Minister of Education, She will be speaking on how diaspora demography could positively impact Nigeria's democracy. News Central Town Hall in New York will be broadcast live on air, YouTube, and on X this Saturday, 28th September at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 4 p.m. West African Time. Venue, J Suites, The Sinatra Floor, New York, USA. The News Central Town Hall Series. Heading to New York.
And it's time for us to get into Focus Africa for today. So welcome to this edition of Focus Africa, where we bring you in-depth analysis on the continent's most pressing issues. And today we're turning our attention to a pivotal event on the global stage, and that is the UNGA 79, where African leaders took center stage. Now, with the backdrop of global challenges ranging from climate change to economic instability, Africa's role in seeking solutions for a troubled world has become more crucial than ever. From calls for fair representation to discussions on sustainable development, African leaders at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly were vocal about the continent's needs and aspirations.
Yes, indeed, they were. Africa's push for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council was a key issue that dominated conversations throughout. For decades, African nations have campaigned for stronger representation in global decision-making forums, and this year's UNGA presented another opportunity to make that case. Now, in addition to political reform, African leaders also highlighted the continent's progress and changes, or rather challenges, in achieving its development goals, as well as Africa's growing influence on the world stage.
And so to unpack all of this, we're joined by a special guest today. He's the author of Africa on the Precipice and also spokesperson of ADAF, and it's none other than Nnamdi Chiweku. His insight on Africa's evolving role on the UN and beyond is much welcome. Nnamdi, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for joining, Nnamdi.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Nnamdi, big question. Can we start with the history of Africa at the UN? There's been so much clamor for representation of Africa with all the influence that Africa brings, with noting that we have the biggest population of youths when compared to the other nations. Give us a bit of history as to Africa's representation at the UNGA.
Yeah, no problem. African countries have been part of attending the UN or part of the UN for the last 65 years since independence. And there has been a growing clamor for Africa and African countries to have more of a say. And more recently, that clamor has resulted in our asking really to be part of the Security Council. And I have to be honest and say that I find it perplexing. I do have to kind of state that I find our desire to be part of the UN counter to African interests, and import of that has shown in terms of the economic and social conditions in Africa over the last few decades, which have continued to get worse. And it begs the question, what do we actually get out of the UN as an institution? And in my personal opinion, the UN is supposed to be a paragon of democracy, of multilateralism. But at the same time, it gives veto power to 5 countries only, who get to dictate and decide what happens to the rest of the world, right? And I find this to be a gross oxymoron. And it does beg the question, why is it that we want to be part of an institution that doesn't necessarily propagate democracy as it claims to, but in some situations exacerbate some of the issues that we're seeing around the world globally. So in terms of Africa's participation in the UN, I think it's been very mixed. And I don't think, in my opinion, that it's the forum or the platform that is going to help us solve our issues as well as the global issues that we see on the continent.
Now, you just talked about, just 5 countries having a veto, having the right to veto on certain issues when it comes to security around the world. But one of the key issues that was raised during the UNGA was Africa's long-standing call for a permanent seat on the UN's Security Council. with all the African leaders, I know Ghana leaders, Ghana's president and Nigeria's vice president called for Africa being on that table. Don't you think that now this might gain some sort of momentum and maybe have Africa at that table?
Yeah, but the question is, to what end? What table are we trying to be a part of? You know, who are the partners on this table? Let's be very frank about the situation, right? In that Security Council, you have Russia, who is currently flouting all types of international rules and laws in its aggression against Ukraine. You have the United States, who is complicit, I believe is complicit in a genocide that's happening in broad daylight in Israel, as far as Palestinians are concerned, on one hand saying that they want peace in the Middle East, and on the other, sending billions of dollars to the Israeli army to murder innocent people. You have the UK, who is the Robin to the US's Batman in terms of its imperialist agenda globally, and the fact that the UK still claims islands like the Falkland Islands, which is halfway across the world. You have China there, who are responsible for a litany of exploitative activities in Africa and other places around the world. So we want to be a part of this table so bad, but who are our partners? You know, our partners are really the issues, right? These countries that are supposed to be the leaders, really, of the UN are the ones that are perpetuating much of the global issues that we see today in terms of climate change, in terms of economic displacement, some of the issues we're seeing with immigration and so on. And so there's this misconception that Africa has. If I were to answer that question, why is it that we want to be part of this table that is not solving the world's problem, is that there's this myth that we need to be part of this table, that Africa needs the world in order to move forward. And I call this a myth because it is the world that actually needs Africa. And if I may, I would like to reference the recent China-Africa forum that happened as an example of this misconception that we have of Africa needing the world. 54 African heads of state traveled to China recently for this forum. 54 African heads of state went to go and see one man in Xi Jinping. The irony of that situation is that China is not China today without Africa, without about 20, 30 years of gaining African resources, bauxite, gold, you name it, in order to build the economy that it has today. And then we now find that our leaders, embarrassingly, to be quite frank, are now going all the way to China to go and kowtow to this to Xi Jinping in order to get handouts and resources that we actually empower them to get. Right? So there's a clamor to be part of this table, but I don't believe that we can solve our problems in Africa or even solve the problems in the world by being part of effectively a mafia or effectively a group of that is dedicated to the subjugation of other communities and states. So I just find this premise and our desire to be at this table really nonsensical.
But Nnamdi, saying that it's nonsensical, one has to ask the question about, the African leaders themselves. Do you think that Africa is at the stage where the presidents or the leaders of the continent have the willpower or the political will to be able to distance themselves from organizations as the UN and any other ECOWAS or whichever, and be able to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, given the level of should I say, exploitation that we've seen from our leaders themselves, and corruption, the list is endless?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there needs to be a lot of house cleaning that needs to happen on the African side of the equation in terms of making sure that we have the right leadership, the right institutions, the right kind of governance structure in order to be effective in managing domestic affairs as well as on the geopolitical level. I will say this, however, is that we are seeing in rumblings the whirlwinds of revolution in this continent, and we're seeing it manifest itself in different ways. We're seeing it manifest itself in terms of coups. We're seeing it manifest itself in terms of protests that, for instance, we've seen in Nigeria. And this is especially amongst the youth, because the youth have come to a point to understand or to have a position where they're saying to our leadership and our ruling elites and the ruling class that time is up. Africans must understand that we are facing serious socioeconomic issues on this continent that if we don't restructure ourselves in the next decade or so, it's going to be too late for us. And for so long, we have operated under this misconception that we have an eternity to solve our problems and to get things right. And the reality is that we don't, because we are behind in 3 economic revolutions, and you now have the energy transition. And if we fall behind in that as well, the gap between us and the rest of the world will be insurmountable. So I say all that to say that African leaders no longer have a choice. They're either going to have to get their acts together within the next 5-10 years, or the powder keg that they're sitting on is going to explode in their faces. And so Africa as a whole needs to understand that we have a greater choice, which is that we either take the time to restructure ourselves, or foreign interests will come and do that restructuring for us. And if they do that, it's going to be extremely painful, and we may not survive it. I think these are the kind of existential dangers that we face on the continent. So African leaders don't have a choice anymore in terms of getting their acts together and moving the continent forward. And I'm very specific about that in terms of sub-Saharan Africa, by the way.
Now, Nnamdi, we saw lots of heads of, leaders of countries speak, and their reference to Africa and aid that Africa must receive. But then I want to focus on the 2 African leaders who have spoken so far, the Ghanaian President, Nana Akufo-Addo, and also the Nigerian Vice President, Shettima himself. Now, there's a bit of disparity between these 2 and their comments at the UN GA. Akufo-Addo actually told about the fact that Africa's solutions lie within Africa. However, when Shettima spoke, he sort of like asked for development aid from the rest of the world for Africans. About this disparity, what do you think when it comes to the expressions of these 2 leaders regarding the same continent, Africa?
Yeah, it's interesting. In terms of, I think actually Shettima did a good job of illuminating some of the issues that we face. Yes, he did kind of mention that resources were needed in order to, or more resources or international coordination, international investment was needed to solve some of the issues we're seeing in the continent as far as terrorism is concerned, and the mass migration that's happening and so on. And while he did that, I think the irony with that situation is that he now comes back to Nigeria and he presides over a government that is exacerbating issues, the same issues that he mentions there. As far as the disparity in terms of do we need the international community and do we don't, I would say that, I lean more in terms of the specific Ghanaian perspective on this, in the sense that, I've always said this, if we cut 25% of the capital flight out of this continent, we don't need anybody. And that's really the fact of it. If we focus on securing our borders, if we focus on making sure that we reduce illicit flow of funds out of this continent and all the other kind of exploitative activities that take place, we don't need the rest of the world. Now, why is it that we don't do that? We don't do that because these same leaders are complicit in terms of these illicit flows. And then that's why they keep us dependent. And that's why I say that we have actually come to a precipice in Africa where this kind of double speaking, this kind of exploitative behavior and coordination between foreign interests and our ruling elites can no longer be sustainable. And it's only if it doesn't change, it's going to blow up in everybody's faces. And so what we are hoping for, as far as the African youth and citizens, is that we have some kind of organized, centralized or coordinated revolution that will finally rid us of this leadership and put in place people who have a much more broader perspective in terms of the advancement of the continent.
Now, to go with the opinion that the UN is actually blind to African plight, and then calling for representation of Africa on the UNGA seat. Now, the question is perhaps maybe, wouldn't it be a case where that representation might be kind of like fought after? What I mean is, who exactly would represent Africa correctly? What country, what leader from Africa would be the best? That's one. Two, wouldn't it be best if Africa came together as a coalition, came together as a group and asked for a seat for Africa as a whole instead of an individual country representing Africa? Your thoughts, please, Nnamdi.
No, 100%. To the extent that we must or we have to, or we see it as strategic imperative that we must be part of the UN Security Council, then I do think that it should go to Africa as a bloc, right? And it kind of allows us to avoid the potential issues in terms of who's going to represent what type of rotation is going to happen. I do think this concept of Africa speaking with one voice on the international stage, and once again, I mean that specifically in regards to sub-Saharan Africa, is important. It's important because we are not going to be able to solve our problems in sub-Saharan Africa unless we federalize, unless we actually come together. This notion of Pan-Africanism, which has always been kind of a romantic idea, is now a condition for survival. It's a condition for survival because the internal as well as external enemies, if you want to put it that way, that contribute to the demise of the continent are too powerful for any one African country to manage on its own. So we need that kind of a structure, a broad structure, a federalization of African countries to have the critical mass, to have the economies of scale in order to effect the changes that we need to on the continent. So I think that is true from an economic standpoint, from a political standpoint, and certainly from a geopolitical standpoint, that we have to stand as a bloc. No African country has the military might or the economic might to be able to kind of affect change, as far as I see it, at the global level. But if we come together, we can absolutely do that.
I'm glad you said economic might and even, military might in terms of security. So it begs to ask the question about our geopolitical importance as Africa when it comes to pushing our agenda in issues of climate change or peacekeeping. What would a perfect picture look like for Africa's geopolitical importance for UN and other, organizations like this?
If I were to be frank about it, we have no geopolitical weight. We have no geopolitical weight as it stands today. No single African country has geopolitical weight. And that's why there isn't a single African country that is part of the Security Council. And so the question becomes, how do we get that weight that we need to? And I would proffer that there are kind of four kind of principles that we need to base it on. One is that we need to boost our economic standing. And the only way that we do that is that we take a protectionist approach to our economies, that we give our industries the time and the space and the resources in order to actually compete at a global level. The second is that we have to take a stance of what I will call diplomatic isolationism, which is that the world order is structured today through institutions like the UN, the World Trade Organization, etc., and not conducive to the growth of Africa. It is interesting that it is the countries that won in an era of global imperialism, subjugation, that effectively make the rules in terms of how economies grow and who gets what. We can't win, geopolitically speaking, economically speaking, by acceding to those rules, right? But you have a situation where the Western world has effectively driven the planet to a point of distress with their economic growth, and then they turn around and tell the rest of the world that you can't do the same, right? And make it difficult to get financing to do certain things. If we accede to those kinds of rules, we're never going to make it. So diplomatic isolationism, I think, is fundamental, that we have to march to the beat of our own drum. We have to do what we want, when we want, and how we see it strategically aligned with our own interests to make it. I think we have to take a protectionist stance as far as our economy is concerned. And then also we have to see a demilitarization of Africa. Africa has not known a day of peace in the last 400, 500 years since the Portuguese fired the first cannons on this continent. And we continue to see conflagrations like we are in Sudan and Ethiopia. And we can't work and develop and become powerful and geopolitically relevant if we have these issues and conflagrations on the continent. And so that necessitates a complete demilitarization of all African countries, and maybe a centralized military that will ensure that we have peace at home before we now seek a greater relevance abroad.
Nnamdi, don't we run a risk of alienating ourselves if you prefer a solution of diplomacy or diplomatic isolation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe isolation is necessary. I believe isolation is completely necessary. I don't even think this is an argument. We have to ask ourselves, Africa has essentially had an open arm and an open door policy for the last 400, 300 years of our history. What has it brought us? We have welcomed every and anybody into this continent and effectively allowed them to run roughshod and do and take and act as they want on this continent. And what has it done for us? It hasn't done anything for us. So we need a period of isolationism in order to restructure our societies, in order to completely overhaul the educational and systems of indoctrination that produces the kind of conditions that we see on the continent. We're not going to continue to do that by continuing to liaise with people who are exacerbating the problems on this continent. We need a period of isolation to get it right, to reform, to restructure, to come together, and then we come back to the world with a new agenda, a new way of behaving in terms of our economic interests and our political interests as well. That isolation is fundamental. We don't do that, I don't think we move forward at all.
Right. All right, Nnamdi, I've got one final question. I fear that I should have asked this question earlier. Now, at the UNGA summit, there was plenty of talk about renewable energy. There was plenty of talk about Africa shifting or transiting from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Plenty of world leaders talked about that and how Africa can get that support. But there is a known argument that the rest of the world, the developed countries, actually got to where they are by, first of all, going through these phases of using fossil fuels. So why the rush for Africa to embrace the transition into renewable energy when it's only just in itself at the beginning stage of that phase to development? What's your thought on that argument? Are we in a rush, or are we being pushed as Africa toward renewable energy a bit too fast? And who's benefiting from this?
Well, anybody that understands the energy space understands that you can't run an economy solely on renewable energy, and you can't dictate to African countries that any further development in our energy sector has to be renewable energy. Why? Because you don't have the base load with renewable energy, right? Renewable energy is kind of inconsistent, so you need a base load that is usually based on a fossil fuel kind of generation in order to be effective. So you need an energy mix that is a combination of renewable as well as fossil fuel driven. And this is the kind of double speak that I'm talking about as far as the international community. You're sitting there, or the international community is sitting there imposing and suggesting that we take on economic principles, or we take on avenues to development that make no sense in reality. We're still having problems with really basic amenities and building roads and some of these things. And then you now impose on us that the only way that we can generate energy is through renewable energy. And at the same time, by the way, the financing for some of these renewable energy projects are much more expensive when it comes to the African context and in some other geopolitical zones. So you put us in a no-win situation. We need to stop taking advice from the international community. We need to stop taking their recommendations that over the last 65 years have put us in the economic quagmire that we are in today. And we need to start listening to our own counsel and to start advancing our own interests and put Africa first beyond any of these entities. And I say it again, if we focus on stopping some of the capital flight that happens in this continent, if we stop our leaders from buying yachts and jets when 90% of our population are there in multi-dimensional poverty, we have the funding and we have the wherewithal to do it. Africa doesn't need the world needs Africa. And it's something that we have to finally understand if we're going to be relevant at global geopolitical level.
Nnamdi, when it comes to, from your answer, it just made me want to ask this question. When it comes to Africa's developmental goals, particularly with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which is the SDG, don't you think Africa has benefited from it in some sense and in some way, from health, education, equity, girls' empowerment and education? When you look at all of these, without the SDGs and the funds and the support from the UN, do you think that Africa would get to its level of developmental goals?
Summarily.
Just quickly.
Well, I think the premise of that question is off. And really, I think that the premise of that question ignores the fact that it is these actors, these foreign actors in complicity with really a ruling elite who effectively have served as houseboys in the continent, who have created the conditions that have now made us need or seem that we need the handouts or the support of the international community. I want to remind the world a little bit of history. Before colonization, before imperialism in Africa, we were developing quite well. Until the 16th century, Africa had empires and kingdoms that were as bright and innovative as anybody else. And so we got to where we were because we lost we lost wars and imperialist powers decided to do anything and anything they wanted to and created those conditions, admittedly with the complicity of some of our people and our population. But this idea that Africa wouldn't be where it is today, etc., without the support of the international community is completely misconstrued. It's fallacious. It's actually antithetical to real history. And the fact of the matter is, if we had continued in our trajectory before this disturbance that we had, as far as the actions of the international community, we wouldn't need anybody today.
So
and I still don't believe that we need anybody today. We just need to manage our resources.
So you don't think that we gained anything from, when it comes to health, immunization, healthcare, access to healthcare, low maternal rate, death rate, mobility, all of that? You don't think that Africa, in some sense, have benefited at all? We got to go because we're pressed for time.
You asked him a question.
No problem. These things were artificially created. No, I don't think we've benefited. We can do these. Not only can we do these things on our own, but those conditions were artificially created, and that's kind of the short answer I would give on this forum.
Short answer is good. Nnamdi, thank you very much. Very interesting personality, I must say, and we're glad that you had time to join us today for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Nnamdi Chukwu, the author of Africa on the Precipice, and also he is the spokesperson for Africa Defense and Advancement Federation. That's ADF.
Oh, what a show we had today. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to talk about the EFCC debacle with Bobrisky, which I would have loved to sink my teeth into or not.
It might be tomorrow. Don't get your...
Perhaps. Look, wondering what people's take is on it. But then again, we'll have this conversation because we must talk about it tomorrow. The EFCC that is chasing the people now, will they chase themselves? This is like, wondering...
I mean,
let's save it for tomorrow.
My brain just did that thing.
We'll save it for tomorrow, which means you have to join us tomorrow because it's going to be very interesting for a Sunday edition here of Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazino Appeal.
And I'm Judith the TV, and it's goodbye from us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.